Welcome back. I've been putting off this video for a bit, but I couldn't quite put into words what I wanted to say about Toriyama's passing. I found out right after I got done with the Hulk versus videos. I didn't want to do something short or anything like that due to so many of my videos paying homage to Toriyama's work. I wanted to do something with a bit more substance, but every time I sat down to do a video, it didn't seem to fit or work, so I'd scrap it and start over, and until eventually I went back and forth on ideas and finally settled on just yakking about my first experience with Toriyama's work and just go from there. So why not? We're hitting a way back machine, all the way back to 1996, when I was just a little kid watching cartoons in my room on a Saturday morning. I just got done with an episode of Power Rangers, and that's when it came on, Dragon Ball Z.
Stand by for Dragon Ball Z. Coming next.
I'm gonna fight as long as my body holds out! Let's turn up the heat!
I was blown away, because the first episode of Dragon Ball Z I ever got to see was Goku vs. Vegeta. I saw action scenes in cartoons before. Batman the Animated Series was on every evening when I got home from school. Cartoons like Transformers would constantly rerun all the time, so it's nothing new, but I'd never seen anything like this. These characters were beating the living tar out of each other, using world-ending powers with a single slip would spell doom for the entire planet. Classism was being shouted, death threats, and so much more. It was just different. Little did I know I was being introduced to anime for the very first time. And what an introduction it was! I came back every Saturday to catch the show when I could while Fox Kids was airing it. And eventually, Fox stopped airing DBZ. I was devastated. At the time, I lived out in the middle of nowhere, and still do. So buying the VHSs or manga wasn't an option for me at the time. Several years passed, and I looked for anything I could, and that's when I came across a game in the store that looked just like DBZ. Chrono Trigger. I begged my parents to get it for me, pleading and eventually bargaining, the usual cutting the lawn, doing the dishes, that kind of stuff. Eventually they caved in, and they got me the game. After I broke a couple of dishes, that chore kind of reverted back to my sister, but to this day I still have to go out and cut their lawn. That was one expensive game. I got home, and as soon as I powered on the PlayStation, I was met with that intro video. It wasn't DBZ, but it was just as good. I played Chrono Trigger until the disc we had eventually started to skip, and no longer played. I tried to get another one for PlayStation, but they didn't have one. They had one for Super Nintendo, but I didn't have one at the time, so it was another drought for me. And for the longest time, I didn't see anything Toriyama related, but my parents came through and finally got satellite TV for the house, giving me access to Cartoon Network and that weekday Toonami block. I was back, baby. I was glued to the TV whenever Dragon Ball Z and all the movies finally showed on Fridays. I was finally able to see past the Namek saga, see Goku transform into a Super Saiyan and Gohan's fight with Cell, and eventually on into the Buu saga. I was on cloud 9, but what nagged at me for the longest time was Toonami reran DBZ fairly often, from start to finish. But my memory was a little different, and I was convinced Bardock was a scientist. My sister called it the Mandela effect, and it wasn't until years later that I learned of the different dubs of DBZ. And the original one was what I watched.
Your father was an average fighter, Kakarot, but he was a brilliant scientist. Who else but him would have thought of creating an energy source that perfectly simulated full moonlight? Haha! Now your own father's invention will be your undoing!
So it wasn't cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. It did happen. Given the bad rep of the OG dub, I'm not going to be one of those that piles onto it. If it wasn't for that dub, I wouldn't have seen DBZ at all. I could have gone my whole life not knowing about DBZ or Toriyama. So, no hate from me. In hindsight, even though you were badly translated and liberties were taken, if it wasn't for you, I would have never saw DBZ. Thanks, bad DBZ dub. But more importantly, thank you, Akira Toriyama. If it wasn't for your work, I would never have gotten into anime. Because I sought out Toonami for DBZ, I was introduced to shows like Outlaw Star, Cowboy Bebop, Gundam, Naruto, One Piece, and so many more. And plus his contributions to gaming got me into JRPGs. I went from Chrono Trigger to the Final Fantasy series and then back to Dragon Ball games. My favorite fighting game of all time is Budokai 3. And I'm pretty sure there are countless others that were affected by Toriyama's work just like I was. With his passing, it just feels like we lost a giant. Toriyama, thank you for everything you have contributed to the world as an artist. I raise a glass in your honor, and hopefully you're already halfway down Snake Way. Cheers, and goodbye. That's all today. Remember to like, comment, subscribe. Y'all have a good one.